I want to start with a land acknowledgement, but first I'm going to admit Omar. We acknowledge the land for sustaining us and for providing us with the necessities of life. This territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty and the Two-Row Wampum Treaty, which emphasize the importance of joint stewardship, peace, and respectful relationships. As we reflect on land acknowledgements, let us remember that we are all stewards of the land and of each other. We recognize that the land on which we gather has been and still is the traditional territory of several Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, the Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Since time immemorial, numerous Indigenous nations and Indigenous peoples have lived and passed through this territory. Sheridan affirms it's our collective responsibility to honor the land as we honor and respect those who have gone before us, those who are here, and those who have yet to come. We're grateful for the opportunity to be learning, working, and thriving on this land. So, for those of you who don't know us, although I recognize a few of you, or a couple of you, so for those of you who don't know us, EDGE is the entrepreneurship hub at Sheridan College, and we focus on impact entrepreneurs, so people who are building social enterprises or social impact organizations. And so we are a community of people from all walks, all backgrounds, who really believe that entrepreneurship can make a lasting change in society. And so we support these change makers as they explore entrepreneurial approaches to what a more sustainable and equitable world looks like. And we do that by helping founders grow the ideas and the ventures that support a triple bottom line approach: people, planet, and profit. We offer mentorship, learning programs. We have a co-working space that people can work out of, and from time to time we offer funding. Really, it's a place for people to come and grow and create ideas and fulfill those ideas and start to build ventures from them. And then we have a number of community partners that we collaborate with to provide the support that our various ventures need. So that's a bit of background on us. If you want to stay connected to us, there's certainly lots of activity on the social channels. So Sumera, being out in the UK, we sure would love to have you follow us on social and engage with us there as well. So today I'm pretty excited because we've got a true change maker in the room. Ahmad-Shah Duranai is a best-selling author, an architect turned entrepreneur, an educator, a speaker, and a community activist. He's a caring leader who's keen to support entrepreneurs and people looking to improve their leadership skills and affect change through their ability to communicate. I've known Ahmad for a couple of years, and it wasn't until recently that I realized that he has been the recipient of the Lieutenant Governor's Award in Humanities and Social Justice, as well as an ambassador for the Peace Award from the United Peace Federation. He's active in board and leadership roles for several community organizations, and he leads regular discussions on peace in Afghanistan. So Ahmad, we're really glad you're here, and I know that this is a little bit different group than is normal for you. I know you do quite a bit of work in corporate, but you also have been working with entrepreneurs across the spectrum. So let's talk a little bit about what you do. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, Lisa, thank you very much for. Do you mind to remove this so we can see each other? It will be better. Well, thank you for that introduction. I hope I will live to the expectations that it generated, but it's a small group, so we will not make a formal presentation. It will be like a dining table, like we're only 6-7 people. So it will be a conversation, a cozy conversation, casual. around a dining table, and hopefully other people will join us also. But if they join us, we will tell them that they haven't lost much, they haven't missed very much. We were just warming up.
Awesome.
Okay, so what you mentioned perhaps is the final result of where I have reached, but let me tell you my story. So my story started a very long time ago and in a far away place, so called Afghanistan. I was born in Afghanistan, but in a part of Afghanistan that is about 120 kilometers south of Kabul, but about 120 years behind in social and economic development. Even to this day, there is no running water at homes there, and there is no electricity. And culturally, it's a place where women don't count except as to bear children and as a source of honor to protect. They don't have identity cards, and only very tough people can survive there. It's a place where school was considered, until a few years back when I was a child, school was considered a curse rather than a blessing. And people will try to avoid putting their children in school because they will lose them, then they cannot work on their land. Only tough people could survive. And my father was a very tough person there. In children department, he was very wealthy, let's say, because he was married 4 times. And were 20 brothers and sisters, and 14 of us grew up to adulthood. The others, they became victims of infant mortality. I was somewhere in the middle. So there were many brothers and sisters who used to boss over me. And my father was also a very dominant figure. So I grew up to be a very shy and timid and scared kid. I couldn't speak in front of adults. In school, I couldn't speak in front of the teachers. And it was a society where adulthood was not determined by how old you become, but by whether you can use a gun. And I couldn't use a gun until I was 14 years old. So my father designated me as the weakling of the family. Being timid, shy, and a weakling, I went to school. He was very smart because he put all his kids through school, despite the fact that the society there didn't like it. So he put me in school, and the only thing I could do was really to listen to the teachers and other people because I didn't have the courage, the assertiveness to speak. So having that kind of background, what the first lesson that I learned was to listen. And that listening later on, I found out, is a key ingredient for any kind of successful communications. And I learned it in my childhood. I'm going through this, my childhood story, because there are some lessons that I learned that are very important for people who become entrepreneurs and people who want to use them. So I will spend a few minutes on those lessons that I learned from childhood. So one of the things I just mentioned was I learned how to listen, and I listened a lot to a lot of crap also, to good things, but a lot of crap, but I couldn't answer them at the time. So I just absorbed, and life went on. The other lesson that I learned was how to self-discipline myself. That self-discipline was very important because I not only had to go to school, but after school, I had to come and take the animals that were serving our family for grazing. In the afternoon, I will take them for grazing. So during the day, I didn't have any time to do my homework. At night, because there was no electricity, they had these small bottles. They will puncture a hole at the top in the metal part, put kerosene and take a piece of cotton from it and we lit it. And in the light of that kerosene lamp, I used to do my homework.
Wow.
And if I didn't do my homework and if I didn't learn my studies, the teachers will beat me the next day. So that dominant father, that requirement to help the family and to walk 1 hour in the morning to go to school and 1 hour back to come back home, I had to allocate my time in such a way that I could do all of those things and avoid beating. And I successfully did that.
Good thing.
Yeah, so discipline, self-discipline is a very important ingredient for success. The other lesson that I learned there in that part was that you have to be very creative, especially when, in my case, where I was not very assertive, I was shy, and I had to excel academically in order to impress my father, so he will not call me in front of everybody that he's the weakling of the family.
Mm.
And that helped me. Hard work. In one of my books, as you mentioned previously, in one of my books, which I co-authored and became the bestseller, it's called Peeking Behind the Scenes. Let's see if a deliberate path to success. The first chapter is mine, and the title is that success is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. So that's a lesson that I learned from childhood. Like, despite the fact that perhaps I was a gifted child, but the school was such that all the giftedness was suppressed. So we had to do the hard work the hard way, and we succeeded in that way also. So as a result of those three things, listening to the teachers, doing the hard work, and disciplining myself, I excelled academically. And I eventually got a scholarship to go to Lebanon and study in the American University of Beirut. And of all the things with that background of the village, I decided to become an architect.
Wow, kind of a leap, right?
Yeah. So this is, I think it's a jump into entrepreneurship. That's
I think
coming
so.
from that kind of background and then studying architecture. And I was very successful, actually, not as an architect, but as because I had an MBA degree, I used to manage architects and coordinate their work. So that ability to manage a group of designers with big egos was another skill that is important. That is the communication skills of how you can suppress your ego in order to manage the egos of other people and create that kind of a high-performing team. I worked on projects in Lebanon. I worked on projects in United Arab Emirates. I worked on projects in Canada, big projects. So people in Canada who will be familiar with it in the Toronto area, I worked on the Toronto General Hospital. I worked on the Nortel campus in Ottawa. I worked on the Waterloo courthouse in Kitchener-Waterloo. I worked on the detention center in Windsor. Mm-hmm. I worked on the Atlantis Resort in Dubai, for example. I worked on hospitals in Lebanon and many places. But I don't know how to design a house.
Different type of work, is it?
Yeah, my own house is a good example of my inability to design a house. Mm. But they say the Italian proverb that the son of the cobbler has a hole in its shoes. So maybe that applies. So today's discussion, I think, is, if I understood correctly, we are going to discuss how entrepreneurs can succeed and how, from my lessons, perhaps sharing my experience, how I managed to do that.
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk a little bit about how you came to be doing the work that you do around peace in Afghanistan.
Yeah, so early from school area, and especially in the university, I got introduced to activism. So in addition to do the academic work, the extracurricular activity was to be an activist. So in the university, we formed an association. Teamwork is extremely important. So we created an association of Afghan students in that university, and we were very active in social issues in the university and outside the university. Many other people used to come and get our advice how that will happen. So we used to take some books and have debates among ourselves. Social issues became very important for us. And then Afghanistan was attacked by the Soviet Union. It was occupied by the Soviet Union, and fighting broke out, and I got stuck in Lebanon, and the civil war started in Lebanon. So 10 years of civil war in Lebanon, I spent with a lot of bullets passing. Like I remember bullets passing over my head, about 1 meter over my head, machine gun bullets. We had explosions within 15 meters of where I was. I survived all of them. As a matter of fact, one day when I was in university in the morning, when I came home, this is a pistol bullet. I don't know if you can see it. Let me put it in a
Yeah, I
context.
see it.
A pistol bullet that I took out from the pillow in my bed.
Wow.
If I had been at home, it would have ended up in my head.
Wow, crazy.
So that's
That would be pretty
yeah.
life-changing though, no, Ahmad?
Yeah, I think I'm living my third or fourth life now. Considering the difficulties that I had throughout all these 7 decades that I have been on planet Earth. So it is important. So far, what I have mentioned, that the things that have led to my success and the experiences that I learned from early childhood was hard work, listen to other people, and self-discipline. 3 lessons that were very important that I learned there. The other thing that I learned from that early time, and I still use it, is role models. Role models not only inspire people, it inspired me. In every stage of my life, I had role models, whether they were my father or my brother, in certain lessons that I learned from my mother as a person with feminine energy, of how that can influence a person. So role models are very important every step of the way. If I want to become an engineer, then I will aspire, my own life story. As an architect, my role model was Frank Lloyd Wright. My role model was three architects that created a company called HOK. And when I came, this was in Lebanon. When I came to Canada, 10 years after I worked in Canada, I became a senior associate in the HOK company. Yeah, so that's the influence and the power of role model.
I find it interesting, though, that what I'd really like to talk to you about is the whole activism piece of your life. Like professionally, you've had tremendous success, and then you go on and you return to your roots in Afghanistan and start, getting yourself involved in some of the challenging issues that.
Yeah, let me tell you how that developed. I was a student activist in Lebanon. The fighting started there. I couldn't live there anymore. I came to Canada. And we saw that there were maybe about 150, 200 Afghan refugees who had come here, but they didn't have access to the English language. They had cultural issues. So from the first year that I came to Canada, I got involved with this group, and then we created an association, and we worked as a team, and we brought about 10,000 Afghan families. We sponsored them through that association. We collaborated with other organizations, with churches, with NGOs, with nonprofit organizations. With their help and with the help of the Canada Immigration, we brought, within about a period of 10 years, perhaps more than 10,000, 12,000 families of Afghans who came here, and they created the bulk of the Afghan community. And then we started organizing ourselves in associations. I was a board member in the leadership. I was for 2 years the president of the Council of Afghan Associations Coast to Coast. Through that position, I got introduced to how democracy works in Canada, how government works, how to be an activist, which influence it can have. And the Afghans have this educational system that, your country is like your mother. You have to love it like your mother. And here we have the ability and the capacity to do something about Afghanistan, and yet Afghanistan is in turmoil. So we did get involved. Last year, we created a mediation group to mediate between the two warring parties in Afghanistan. We contacted them. We had meetings with the United Nations representatives. We had meetings with the United States government representatives. We made proposals to them. And so that's how the activism came and how it made the impact, and also use social media for that impact. Even now, I have a weekly program in Afghan languages of how important it is to learn soft skills so that the Afghans who have been in a state 2 generations, they have seen nothing but war. So they have this culture of war and sword. The gun and the culture of war has permeated the fabric of the Afghan society. And we want to free them from that mentality, from that mindset, to come to peace and dialogue and negotiations, and to focus more on creation, contribution. War is very destructive. It doesn't create, it doesn't contribute in any positive manner. So that is how I got involved in it.
Lots of change in Afghanistan in the last 6 months. Yeah. Well, more than that now, I guess.
7 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
7.
Was there ever a time when you felt discouraged by that?
I have learned to accept things as is, and then see whether I can improve on it. And I believe this will be a very good thing, even in business. In business, we need to have a vision. It's very important to have a vision. So I have a vision for my boutique business that I have here, and I have a vision for Afghanistan also, how Afghanistan should be in the next 10, 15, 20 years, and how my business should grow in the next 10, 15 years. If I'm still there, at least I hope that I will be there.
I don't know. You seem younger than you are, Ahmad.
Yeah. Okay, but
you
we have a saying in our culture that you conquer the world by hope. So I hope that I will be there. I'm also a family person. Like, one of my passions is to have fantastic relationship with my family and my friends. And I would like to have many more years so I can play with my grandchildren. I have the first one will be 1 year in April.
Wow,
1 year old
awesome.
in April. So yes, I would like to wear different hats: a family hat, an entrepreneur hat, a social activist hat, and to make an impact in different areas. There is one thing, though, I would like to share with the people who are here, and that is, don't multitask. When you are wearing a hat as a family person, then focus on the family. When you are wearing a business hat, then focus on the business. When you are wearing a hat for social impact, if it is outside your business, ideally it will be good to have this, what one of my mentors refer to as intentional congruence. Perhaps you may want to.
Which is what we are all about here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Intentional
Alignment between
congruence.
business
and what we do socially, what we do in the family, what we do elsewhere. So all of them have to support each other.
Mhm.
That intentional congruence is very important.
I like that. Another way to say that is more like leverage points, right? Where you have synergy between each area of your life and each one leverages the other.
Yeah.
I usually at this point open it up for discussion or questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Samara, I'm going to pick on you first, since you know it's almost bedtime over there.
Yeah, that's correct. Sorry, my hair's still messy from the
That's
gym.
okay. Is there anything that comes to mind as you've heard Ahmad speaking?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's been really inspiring to hear, and what a story, and wishing you, yes, many years to come, to do all your great work, to continue all your great work. I was very interested in what you said at the start about not really speaking, and the environment that you grew up in. I was the quiet one as well growing up, and it's been like a journey of kind of coming away from that story and that narrative. But I still feel like I could do better, not do better. I could push myself more in terms of speaking up. And I'm also a reflector in how I think, and I'm not, I won't respond straight away. So sort of still creating that kind of, how do you still create that kind of interest that people have in what you have to offer? Yeah, when in a sense I don't feel the most charismatic one in the room, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So that is a great question and very relevant, and I can share my experience with you. How I became, well, I still feel from time to time that I'm not very assertive, but I think compared to what I just explained where I was, I'm extremely assertive. The gap, the delta between where I was and where I am is huge. It's much. And what I did was I had mentors and I attended some programs, but the lesson that I learned from one of them was that, as a matter of fact, let me ask you and also everybody else that if you were in a school, in Sheridan School where this program is, but let's say you are in a big space, in a movie hall, or there is a big conference, and you are walking in the foyer outside, and you see a fire. There is a fire, that place is on fire, and you know that this auditorium is full of thousands of people there, but they don't know that the building is on fire. Will you be able to go there, open the door, and in front of those thousands of people, and you say that the building is on fire, run and get out?
Oh yeah, in that case, I definitely would.
Okay, so that is the beginning of becoming a public speaker.
But that would tie to passion.
That means that your calling has to be your calling, your passion, and your purpose has to be there. My teacher taught me that the more you serve, the more you deserve. And that's, so if your mindset is based in service, and you have developed a very good purpose in life, and you have discovered it, and you know what your passions are. Your passions are the breadcrumbs, that will lead you to your purpose, to your destiny. When you have that discovered, then to speak to the number of people in order to serve them.
Mhm.
You overcome that barrier.
It's
Thank
so
you.
interesting that you, sorry, Samira, you go ahead.
Oh, it's thank yeah, thank you for those words. I think I'm still discovering, I would say.
We are all learning. One lesson that
Mm.
I learned from my childhood is that you learn from the cradle to the grave.
Mm.
Even now that I have my own programs, I teach, I have trained the staff of the United Nations in Uganda. I have trained a group of bankers in Abu Dhabi. I was flown from here to spend 2-3 days with those bankers there and train them on how to nurture high performance teams. Or they flew me from here to Uganda to teach the staff of the United Nations presentation skills. Because there was a purpose, there was that focus. The focus is very important. What I mentioned, if you wear a particular hat, focus in that field. And luckily you have designed your life where whatever hat you focus, you are wearing, it is aligned with the other hats that you will wear at other times. And so that will really work very well in that case.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I find it so interesting that it's passion that would drive you to get past that fear or that inner voice, it
Yeah.
seems.
Passion is defined in many different ways, but one definition of passion that I like is from Dennis Whitley, I think that's his name. He says that passion is that thing that if you do not do it, you will experience pain.
Mm. So more pain from not doing it
Not
than
doing
from
it,
speaking.
than from doing it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Omar, what does this bring up for you?
No, thank you. Again, Ahmad, thank you so much for sharing your story and, you know, sort of these lessons that you learned along the way throughout your life's journey. One of the things for me, which is really neat to hear, is, you know, the beginning of the story where you mentioned doing mostly listening and not necessarily being someone at a time that's more forward and extroverted, I would say, to now being someone that's called upon to be traveling across the world to deliver presentations and publicly and be extroverted in that way, delivering. So that's really neat to hear. For Samira, I guess one of the things that I do just want to share is that the fact that you're here on the call, you know, turn on your video and you were able to speak. This is a form of public speaking for you. So the fact that you were actually able to, you know, demonstrate that in this space speaks to the fact that public speaking is already there. It already exists. How you cultivate it, you know, it comes to you. But I do want to just recognize that and bring that to the forefront that you're doing public speaking right now. So kudos to you. Yeah, I guess it's really interesting
That's
to
for
say.
Samira, that's for you.
Yes, that's
That's
what
for you, Samira.
Thank you. Thank you. I also, yeah, thank you.
It's funny.
I know I'm already on that journey.
I used to have a gig where I organized events and brought speakers in from all over. And the best speakers were usually the shyest people. So I'm not sure why that is, something about their ability to listen and then articulate solutions or whatever. I don't know.
Let me put my insights on what is an extrovert, who is an extrovert, and who is an introvert. The way I look at it, introvert doesn't mean that they are shy. It means that for them to energize themselves, they don't need external stimulus. While an extrovert, in order to energize, needs external stimulus, had to be validated by external
like validation,
factors.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is the difference. And because the introverts do not need that external stimulus, they can get more tuned to the audience.
Interesting. Maybe that's it. When we were talking earlier, And Omar, before I go on, you were starting to say something and then I feel like I interrupted. Was there something else?
Oh, no, it's okay. It's all good.
So I wanted to know where we met, because your name is familiar. I wanted to connect with you on LinkedIn in the past few days. I don't know which other meeting did you attend?
He came out to a Thursday morning.
Oh, you were in Thursday morning.
Mhm.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that's where,
Mhm.
because I went to LinkedIn to connect with you, but there were so many with the same name, so I couldn't connect. That's very.
Now
Thank
you
you.
know. So when we were talking before, Ahmad, you talked about 6 barriers that
Yeah.
keep us from reaching our potential.
Yeah.
Do you recall us talking about that?
I will do, actually. I will, what I learned when I was writing my book, and some of the barriers that I was facing, actually, I realized that there are 6 barriers that prevent us. But if I can share the screen, maybe I will
Sure,
do
yeah.
through a slide.
Can you share? You good?
Do you see it? Do you see the slide?
We can.
Okay. So what I learned was that when we are early, like when I was in my childhood, my story I told you, I was really in the zone of dependence. I didn't, I couldn't speak with anybody. I was shy. I relied on the help of other people, etc. And then in some aspects, what we do is we biologically grow to the level of maturity, or what I refer to as the self-reliance. But to grow mentally and emotionally and spiritually and in many other aspects, there are certain barriers that come across that we need to cross them. And the number one barrier is language, the first thing. And this is very critical. When I came to Lebanon from Afghanistan, I had to learn the language that was popular in Lebanon. Like with Afghan languages, I couldn't succeed there. I had to learn that. And later on, when I started my own business, I actually found out that language doesn't differ horizontally, geographically, but also vertically in the society. The language that the wealthy and the rich people speak is different than the language that the people at the lower economic strata speak. So if we want to become entrepreneur and to be in that language, in that zone, which I refer to as the zone of excellence, or to be the leaders, the leadership zone, we have to learn that language, because in the zone of independence, we learn the language of that area. And then we grow up, we need to learn that language. And when we grow up, we need to learn that language. And the difference will be very simple. If you go to a Tim Horton here, or to some other restaurant, and you are sitting there to sip your coffee, and a group of truck drivers come and sit on one side, and a group of doctors and nurses come and sit on the other side, they will both be speaking English, but they will be speaking completely different languages. So vertically is the same thing. People who are at a higher level of success, their language is grounded in accountability, in responsibility, in being proactive, not blaming other people for their lot. But those who are down below, they will be in blame and complain, blame and shame kind of language. That's what they use. The second one is the lack of purpose. About 95% of the people around the world, they don't know why they're here on planet Earth. They don't have any. So once we discover our language, our purpose, then the next barrier is that we don't know how to discipline ourselves. So we allocate enough of our time and resources to live on purpose. And if we do these 3, we will actually reach that level of self-reliance emotionally and spiritually and mentally. Not just biologically. Biologically, we will if we get, If we have a shelter and we get food, we will automatically reach that level. But we need to cross those barriers in order to reach that level. But that is not the highest level. Our highest level of potential is not at our independence, when we become independent. Even though in North America, in the school system, they teach and they encourage people to become independent, to become self-reliant. The highest potential is when we join with other independent and self-reliant people, and we synergize our skills and our abilities. That is called interdependence. And to reach there, we need to conquer three other things also. That we have to conquer our ego. We have to manage our ego in such a way that it doesn't become an obstacle for us to work with other people. And then the fifth one is we learn the communication skills. We have learned the language, and now we need the skills to find out how to use that language that will support us and our goal and our mission and our vision and our calling. And the sixth barrier is how to collaborate with other people. That collaboration and creative cooperation with other people will lead us to success. So those are the barriers.
So where do people have natural abilities one way or another, right? So where does that play into this?
They will play into all of these, depending on, let's say I'm an architect and I excel in architecture. If I don't manage my ego, architecture is not a one-person job, even though idea might come from the brain of one person, but in order to manifest it in physical world, you need a big team of people. And if you cannot manage your ego and you don't have communication skills properly to put a team together with a common purpose and goal, and you can collaborate with them and cooperate, you won't achieve it.
Well, I was thinking that, some people are naturally more dominant, let's say, which suggests an ego. And others are maybe more dominant, more inclined to be, let's say, very disciplined because they like a certain process or procedure. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and what they will do is, if they are not in the appropriate position in the organization that needs that kind of skills, they will not be very successful.
Yeah, it's almost like you need to align.
Yeah, you see, all of those skills have to be aligned with the tasks.
Yeah. So in other words, does this go in a linear way then? Meaning like
it is
zone of dependence through to leadership zone? Like, do you ever flip back and forth, or is it always kind of a linear progression?
It is a progression, but it is not linear. It's a three-dimensional progression. So
you get control of this part of yourself, but not this part, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And unless you have that strong calling where you can then ignore some of the things, say, okay, my calling at this time is that I'm going to do this no matter what happens. And it's so strong that some aspects of your life you will ignore.
Interesting. Linda, we haven't called on you. Is there anything that's rising up for you that you'd like to ask Ahmad, or something you'd like to highlight?
I would like to know, when you're trying to collaborate and you have resistance, like what's the best way about going to have people move along the line? Yeah.
Good question.
This is a great question. And the stepping stone to collaboration is the number 5 that I mentioned. I hope you took note. The number 5 is the communication skills. If you have the communication skills, Lisa is familiar with the program that I have. She hasn't attended it yet, but a program that I'm a master trainer of, what is called verbal Aikido, which is not my own creation. I'm a licensed to teach it. And the verbal Aikido was developed as non-adversarial non-adversarial communication skills, which has this kind of skills. The first thing is you control self, you manage your interactions with other people, and you influence. So manage interaction and influence people are those 3 stages of the communications. And what happens is it has tools where you learn. First of all, you learn how you communicate. If is it okay if I elaborate, Lisa, on this? That there are 6 different ego states that reside within us. Okay, and as we grow up, 1 or 2 become dominant. And when they become dominant, we are not familiar with, we are not aware of it. And the resistance comes when our expectations and our ego state, our dominant ego state, are not aligned. So when I'm communicating with, let's say my dominant ego state is a critical parent, and I'm not aware of it. But when I talk with Lisa, with Lisa, I expect that when I say something, she will respond to me as an adult. Mm-hmm. And I think that I'm talking with her as an adult also. But because of my not being aware of how I'm talking, I don't invite the adult in Lisa. I invite the angry child in Lisa when I speak from a critical parent.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay, and when that thing happens, then there is no cooperation, there is resistance. But if I know how to manage these ego states, then what I will do is, first of all, I will make sure that when I'm talking, the dominant, what I call it, the director of the orchestra, is my adult ego state. I know that I have a parent ego state, a critical and a nurturing parent. But I have also an adult ego state. I have a spontaneous child ego state. I have a withdrawn child ego state, and I have an angry child ego state. But if the dominant is the adult ego state, then I will speak from my adult ego state. And that means I'm inviting the adult and the other person. However, if for one reason or another, the other person responds to me from their child or from their parent ego state, I will know how to manage it. I will accept from where they are coming. And then by asking an information seeking question, I will bring them back to their adult ego state. And that is the state where collaboration happens. Mm. So Linda, to answer your question shortly, is that you can remove the resistance by mastering these, what is referred to as transactional analysis of the ego states.
Sounds complicated. What do you think, Linda? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I guess you were taking a second to unmute.
Oh, no, I was saying thank you for that information. Do you know where I could find more, like what you're, because I know there's like different methods around communication and those type of like personality traits and such.
Yeah.
Where would I be able to find more information about these ego states that you were talking? Because that's something new to me.
Okay, so maybe just to find out what is your dominant ego state, I'll give you this assessment as a bonus.
Okay.
Okay, and as a matter of fact, Omar, if you are interested, and Lisa, if you are interested, I will give this as a bonus to all 3 of you. It's an assessment that what happens is I will send you an information sheet where there are 7 different statements, and you score yourself on that one. It says, some people tell me that I'm this kind of person. Some people tell me that I'm this kind of person. And you score yourself from 1 to 10, and then you scan and you send it to me. And then I will make a 15 to 20-minute appointment with you. And we will go over what your scoring shows is the dominant ego
I like
state
that. That's a good offer. Thank you. Can I share your email address in the chat?
Sure. Yeah? You have my email address. So
there you go. Share. Yeah.
Thank you.
So just send an email to Ahmad. This is part of verbal Aikido, is it, Ahmad?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a small part of verbal Aikido, but it is a very
Yeah,
critical, important part. That is, you will know who you are and where you are coming from.
I like it.
Now, it will not tell you if another person comes, how do you manage that other people? You will know how you manage yourself.
Okay.
I notice that a lot because I tend to be a pretty like directly speaking person. So let's just call it that. Sometimes, I guess you could say sometimes too dominant. So I find that I have to temper myself. Like I'm thinking about examples like, you know, simple life things, like when I'm dealing with my ex-husband around my child, or when I'm dealing with the school and I, you know, having some small disagreement with the way they're handling something around my child. You know, I find I have to consciously temper myself. That's what you're referring to, that ability to take yourself into an adult state.
That's correct. And one thing about children, what I would like to say is that, okay, children biologically, chronologically, they are young, but let me tell you, do children have spirit? Okay, so how young is their spirit compared to your spirit?
I think they come more knowing than I am.
Yeah.
It's
So
almost like you
their
lose
spirit,
that as you get older.
Their spirit is as old as your spirit, right? Because spirit is not in the physical universe, it's in the spiritual universe. And spiritual universe doesn't have time and space associated with it.
Interesting. Linda, how's that sit with you?
Yeah, I didn't really think about it that way, but yeah, that makes sense. I'm gonna quote you on that.
Omar, how's this sitting with you?
It's interesting, especially given, you know, some of my educational background, being in social work and different modalities around working with individuals. I'm thinking about like motivational interviewing, a lot of different approaches towards working with individuals and stages of change. One of the things that's really coming up for me is something that my wife is learning about. It's called internal family systems, IFS training, and IFS training looks at an individual's different parts and how those different parts show up in their interactions on a day-to-day basis, and how different parts can even potentially impact their mental health in different ways. And so IFS is a model of counseling approach. And so just, you know, as you're sharing a little bit about different ego states and things like that, it made me think about just some of the learning that she's going through with understanding IFS itself. And so it's not completely new to me, some of the things that you're saying, given just some of my understanding. And so it's quite interesting to see the parallels between, you know, some of the concepts that you're sharing, as well as some concepts that I am also aware of as well too. And it's making it feel as though all the information is there. It's just how do you find it and how it's packaged to different individuals. And so that really speaks to your piece around the language, right? Because how you know, how it's packaged and delivered to one group is going to be completely different to another group, even though, as you said, you're both speaking English.
Yeah, that's true. And just to add to what you just mentioned in this regard is in my formal presentations in seminars and in seminars, I make an agreement with people in the beginning. And that part of that agreement is that whatever I say is not new. It's like rearranging the patterns. The pieces of the patterns are already there and you already know it. It's like rearranging the furniture in the room or staging a house for making its value bigger. And so that's what it is. There are certain principles that are important. It doesn't matter whether you are a doctor or you are an entrepreneur or you are a social worker or you are an engineer, and those things work, and it is important just to realize here, and that is, how do you look at success and failure? One principle that I learned, I was so afraid in my life, I was so afraid of failure. I thought that the world will just collapse. When I go to the exams, my hand will be shaking, even though I have studied and I know, and I used to be the top student in class. Still, when I go to the exams, my hand will be shaking that I might make a mistake. I cured it by failing 1 year. I failed 1 year in university, I repeated it. And I found out that the sky was still there, the earth was still there. Many people didn't even know that I failed.
It's true. Like, we make things bigger in our minds.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is, don't look at failure as failure, but look at it as lesson learned. Because from every failure, we learn more from our successes than we learn from our failures.
You learn more from your failures than you do from your successes, you mean?
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I said the other way. So Tony Robbins says that when you succeed, you party. When you fail, you ponder. And that pondering is where we learn more from than from the drinking party, getting drunk.
You know, it's a funny thing you say that, because I'm on my 5th business. I've started 5 companies now, and you know, I've had some success, but the lessons, and so in this business that I'm in now, I'm working with entrepreneurs and helping them fix issues in their company to allow them to grow, and most of what I teach and coach and consult on are things that I learned in the biggest disaster, the one business that went so bad that I lost the whole thing. It's not the successes where I learned, it's that big blazing failure.
Yeah, and then that's very true. The other thing is that when people, when we look at successful people who are successful because the media says they are successful, etc., we ignore, and the media also ignores, that before they reach their success, they had many trials and tribulations. They failed many, many times, but they didn't succumb. The failure will be that when you give up.
Yes.
When you don't succeed, you give up. That is the failure. But when you don't succeed, you try again. And if you don't succeed, you try again and again. That's tenacity. Resilience. You come, and eventually success comes. So what the media shows, the glamour is in the tip of the iceberg. There is a lot of other stuff below the water, the surface of the water, that we don't become aware of.
Yeah, it's true. You always hear about these overnight successes. But the truth is there's
no
years behind
success.
that.
Yes.
Or, you know, in Omar's case, he's figuring out what he's doing, you know, ideation stage, right? Am I right? Yeah. So, you know, in that stage, there's a lot of thinking, a lot of exploring ideas, a lot of, you know, thinking through business models or whatever. You know, that's not an overnight success in any way, shape, or form. When we were talking before this call, Ahmad, we were talking about social impact in entrepreneurship, and you identified a few things that you think are really important as it relates to having an impact through entrepreneurship. Do you remember?
Yes, yeah. So a few things that we can do through entrepreneurship that will have a social impact is, first of all, we will refresh it, and I might add some things to it. So the first thing is that if you are an entrepreneur with a big calling, with a purpose, okay, and if that purpose is grounded in service, then what will happen is you will have a big social impact in that one, because you have to define your, why do you want to become an entrepreneur? The why is the first question that you want to answer. Is it self-centered or is it other-centered? And if it is self-centered, you will know that you will not succeed. Most people who have started as self-centered, they might be happy that they created something, but that thing will not be sustainable and that thing will not grow to the level of its full potential. It will grow only when more and more people come and you influence their life, you impact in their life. That's how the things will grow. Let me bring an example of Elon Musk. You know that Elon Musk reached to a level where he invested all the money that he had in his business, and he didn't have the money to pay for his rent. He had to borrow the money from his friends to pay the rent. Okay.
Remember the story.
Okay, but his calling is much bigger. He look at it this way. He says that if the human history, the way it has evolved and it continues like that, it will self-destruct. The planet Earth will not be sustainable with this kind of consumer mentality, the consumption that is penetrated. So he's doing from two perspectives. He's working. One of them is that, okay, if Earth becomes uninhabitable because of human activity, we should have an opportunity to have colonies on Mars. So his X space or SpaceX, whatever that program is geared to develop that technology that eventually will take people to Mars so they can start colonies there, hopefully more sustainable than what they do on Earth. The other of his calling is that, okay, how can we save Earth? And that is his Tesla, where it's all electric, and it doesn't create the gases that develop a greenhouse effect, and that the climate change that is there, that if he succeeds, it will have a tremendous social impact. That's so the purpose is aligned with the social impact that he is causing.
It's interesting, and it comes from a passion place, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, when I first came to Edge to do, well, what was originally a project, I came in and they were just in the middle of talking about converting to focus on impact entrepreneurs and supporting impact entrepreneurs. And I was like, I mean, I come from a pure for-profit entrepreneurship background, right? So I was like, I don't get it. Every entrepreneur is about making an impact. Otherwise, they wouldn't stay in business, right?
Yeah.
I think there's still some truth in that. I've come to learn that there's a whole lot more around making a social impact that ties to bigger issues and better management systems or impact metrics than maybe what the average entrepreneur is using. But I still believe at its core, most of the entrepreneurs that I know are driven by wanting to make and affect change in the world.
Yes, there was a change in the second half of the 20th century. You know, before that, there was a corporate citizenship, for example. Yeah? Corporate citizenship was an idea that was prevalent in the late 19th century, early 20th century. And then what happened was, with this consumer mentality, even for individuals were considered citizens. They were called citizens in society. And when the consumer mentality prevailed, they became consumers. So that kind
almost
of,
like, what came first, the consumerism mentality or the consumers?
So I'm not sure. I would say that perhaps in North America, if I will look at Don Sullivan's idea of what he refers to as the American dream, which American dream the first time it was used was in 1932. Before that, there was no such expression as American dream.
Mhm.
And perhaps that was that, you know, we have all the resources that we can consume. It's okay. There is no end to it. And if we finish here, the rest of the world will give it to us.
Mm.
And from there, that mentality of consumerism started. I think people are now going back to both the corporate citizenship, their social responsibilities. Some companies in their vision, in their core values, they put that kind of social impact.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think Johnson and Johnson company initially had something like that on their social
Yeah.
responsibility, and then they ignored it, put it somewhere in the back burner, and now they're reviving it. So that is an important element.
Yeah, I was on a call this morning with the Coalition for a Better Future,
Mm.
and that is a group of originally founded by business people who were bringing together, you know, social organizations like community organizations together with labor and government representatives, and trying to basically say, if we're going to restore the country economically, then how do we do that? Economic growth needs to be founded in, what's their thing? Equity and inclusivity.
Yeah,
Um,
DEI
so
was
kind of
the-
like a build back better kind of an idea, but, you know, without using that tagline, but certainly around the impact that
Yeah.
needs to be considered for as part of economic growth. Found it kind of interesting.
So what has happened is, yes, this inclusion is very important, that, you know, the bulk of the society. Well, there was the shape of the society for some time where in countries where there is political and economic stability, the shape wasn't a pyramid. The pyramid shape for the society where a few people has a lot of wealth, and at the bottom, the poverty line, a lot of people are poor. That is a very unstable society. Most of the revolutions that
100%.
happen. So a more stable society is when you create a kind of a pentagon where the bottom is smaller, and then more and more people accumulate wealth in the middle class. If you hear Justin Trudeau talking on the middle class in his campaigns, he's referring to that middle class is what creates stability in the society.
Mm-hmm.
And so business people are now becoming aware of, but the trend has been with globalization that the wealth is accumulated in a fewer hands, and most of the other people are ignored, they are excluded. And that's why this corporate, even legislation come where they look at the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. A very important element, and I think anybody who has an entrepreneurial spirit has to be aware of it. Not only be aware of it, but embrace it.
100%. Yeah, probably one of the earliest adopters of it, where corporate needs mandates. You know, entrepreneurs running smaller companies, looking for the best people in the best environment, are probably doing it naturally anyway, to some extent, right? More inclusivity, more fresh ideas, more growth, presumably,
And
hopefully.
So a lot of corporate activities have been driven by shareholders' interest. I think the shift should happen is to deal with shareholders' responsibility.
100%.
And if that happens, shareholders' responsibility for the society, because the society gives them their clients, their consumer, people to consume their products or services. So they should have a responsibility. Not only freedom without responsibility is going to lead to chaos and disruption of normal life.
It's an interesting question, because you have to consider that, you know, depending on the company and the investors that are making that financial commitment, there's risk to them, right? Personal risk, financial risk. to making an investment, let's say in a smaller company. You know, if you're talking larger corporate with shareholders, well, that's often each one of us buying up.
So in
Shares,
Canada and in the United States, they call it the antitrust legislation. And in Canada, they have it also there. I think they call it anti-combine something act.
Yeah.
It is very important that, yes, the natural tendency for these companies will be that, okay, through growth and acquisitions, the company grow, and in that area, they kind of become monopolies. And there should be a limit on it. In my opinion, the society has to organize itself that no company can grow to dominate the market to that extent. But I will even go further. I think no country in the world has to grow that strong that they can dominate the world. It has to come, you know, otherwise smaller countries will be excluded from.
Always, yeah, it's
Their
not
voice
right.
will not be heard.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I want to switch gears for a minute. Just as we wrap up, I want to ask you to talk a little bit about, like, you've been involved in things that we tend to see as you know, pretty high profile organizations, like take your work with the UN and some of the recognition you've got, and and then you've been involved in big projects in your career as an architect. Like, your network must be pretty big and must be full of very important people, and yet you talk to us little people here. So tell me about that. Tell me about the whole networking piece and how you build and make connections.
So there are three elements that I would like to say. Even before going to network, let's go to some fundamentals that are very important for what I learned in the past since I became an adult and I got involved. Okay, so in social activities and in business, there are three fundamental things that people have to become aware. For them, that their impact will be proportional to their potential. Okay. Item number one is they have to do everything to become visible.
Yeah, so that means what?
So that means that they have to be visible in the area, in that space where they want to make an impact. If they're not visible, so one of the example, Linda, don't take it personal, but like, for example, if we are communicating and you have turned your video off, that means your visibility is already reduced compared to the other three people who are here.
And we're not picking on you, Linda. Lots of these calls have people with their phones, their
so
cameras
there are
off.
some people like that. For you might have a very legitimate reason, and that is very fine. But let's say if you want to make a bigger impact, then become visible. Even in a small scale like this, become visible. And if you are proactive, then whether some people, for example, either they haven't done their makeup, so they don't want to be seen, or the background of their home is in such a way. But if there is proactivity involved in it, people are proactive, then they will design that when an opportunity comes, they become visible.
Right.
The second thing that is important for them is to become credible.
Yes. And how do you become credible?
To become credible, you have to show results. There is a trust triangle that I think we have a few minutes, so I can talk for a minute or two on trust triangle. The trust triangle has three components. There is trusting self, extending trust to others, and other people trusting you, attracting the trust of other people. And they are interrelated, those three. The base of that triangle is self-trust. And the four elements of the self-trust that are there, that Stephen M. Marcovy in his book, The Speed of Trust, he explains it. There are four it's like a table that has four legs. And if one leg is missing, that table will not be stable. If two are missing, then the table will fall. So that table of trustworthiness, the first one is integrity.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is intent. The third one is competence.
Mm-hmm.
And the fourth one is results. So
Awesome.
those will give you credibility. It's called the four cores of credibility, but it's really related to how other people will trust you.
Right.
And it's completely different than whether you love somebody or you like somebody. So for example, I love my wife, and I believe that she loves our kids more than I do. But if my kid, God forbid, requires a surgery, I will not allow my wife to perform the surgery. Why? Because she is not competent as a surgeon, and she has shown no results. Even though she might have integrity and she might have good intent.
I think she probably wouldn't trust herself either.
Yeah, exactly. So those four things are very important. Now, the first two are related to a character of the person, and the last two is to their competence. So their capability and their result is related to their competence, and competence is a learnable skill.
Right.
Okay, and even the integrity and the intent can be enhanced, because that is a transformational change. When character improves, you transform into a better version of yourself. But when your competence improves, you get better results, and you have your capability, your capacity to perform increases.
And then you also the other day talked about commodity.
Okay, so and that's the third one I was coming to. The third one is that you have to be different than others. Okay, you have to be different, because if you are not different, you become a commodity, and you don't want to be a commodity. If you are a commodity, you don't excel in your potential. So you have to be different. Differentiate yourself from other people, and you can differentiate yourself by several ways. In my case, for example, I always wanted to work with the United Nations, but nobody will invite me. And then I wrote my book, The Leadership Zone. The Leadership Zone gave me that kind of not only credibility, but it distinguished me from many other trainers. I am now a trainer with a book on leadership, and relationships, and the book is full of a lot of content. So that not only gave me credibility, differentiated me from other trainers. And this international company called me that, will you be willing to train the staff of the United Nations? Will you be willing? Yeah. Will you be willing to take our training manual and teach these bankers our program? Even though eventually when I went to Dubai, they told me they don't want this training. Can you generate some new material and teach them?
Wow.
Okay.
Crazy.
So that's an entirely different story, and a very successful one. But those are the three elements through which a person can have a bigger social impact, can have a bigger impact in his own industry, in whatever services they produce. If the person is visible, if is credible, and is different than other people.
Okay, we have just a few minutes left. I'm going to turn it over to Linda and Omar. Do you have any questions or any final comments?
No, from my side, this was very informative. Thank you again, Ahmad. Just the wisdom that you shared was really, really helpful for me, especially in the phase that I'm in around ideation. And so just really being able to take in the information, sit with it and then figure out for myself, how can things become actualized? And then tapping into my own strengths and continuing to do my own self-reflection and awareness to be able to tap into one of my strengths and areas that, make sense to be able to go on the next journey.
Mhm. Very good.
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to thank you for your time. I think it's really important about what you said about managing yourself. And I've done like the Stephen Covey like pass with my work and everything. So
Mhm.
it's just kind of like looking at your circle of influence. And then that normally is always like yourself and what you can do and what you can build upon yourself and such. So
Yeah,
love that.
so there are 3 circles. I usually, in my seminars, I tell them the first circle is the area where you can control. The second circle is what you can manage. And the third is where you have influence. And then outside, the rest of the world is outside the circle of influence. But those are the 3 gradations. You can look at it vertically also, where the top is where you can control, and that is only self. Other people you can manage, other events, stimuli, whatever comes to you, you manage them. And then through that interaction process, you influence people. So that's very good. Thank you for that contribution, Linda. I really appreciate it.
Ahmad, as we wrap up, I just want to reiterate, it's okay if everybody emails you.
They can email, but I can also share, I can also, yes, if they email me, then I can email them the form of the
Awesome.
bonus that I give.
Yeah.
But I can also put my WhatsApp number.
Oh, perfect.
So that's my cell phone and my WhatsApp number.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, we so appreciate you being here tonight, Ahmad. This has been a really good discussion, and I loved that it was a small group so that we could all talk. It was great. So appreciate you sharing your personal story and your lessons on leadership and life. And I know I've come away with quite a few tidbits.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. I always, one of my calling is to support the leaders of the future, the leaders and the aspiring leaders, which I call them the leaders of the future. So if I can share my experience and they can benefit by it, I'm always available.
Well, we're grateful for that. Thank you so much. And thank you, Omar and Linda, for being here and for joining in the discussion. We so appreciate it. This is what the goal of Mentor Monday is for people to just talk, to get to know one another, to expand our networks. So we're grateful for you participating in this way. We really appreciate that.
And you can connect with me on LinkedIn also.
Awesome.
I think my picture is very clear of who I am, even if there are people with other names, with the same names.
Awesome. Thank you so much.